have to say that I am completely humbled by what 2 hands and a brain can do. And, everything that you see, somebody put love and time and effort into doing. And the incredible thing about manufacturing is that you get to see the results of your actions, of what your hands do, of what your brain can do, of that teamwork that you can do with other people immediately. I mean, it's just the most instant gratification that there can be.
A quick interruption to remind you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better. Hey, it's Ari Santiago, President, CEO of IT Direct. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Made in America podcast. Continuing our theme with tremendous women in manufacturing, I am so excited to have Meredith Shay on the podcast today. Meredith and I know each other from serving on the board of EAMA and from her just being such a tremendous person and supporter of Connecticut, CEO of InCord in Colchester, Connecticut. Meredith, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure
Well,
to be
listen,
here.
Meredith, it's the Made in America podcast. So we start off with the same 2 questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
So InCord makes safety netting, and we make it because it was what the owners knew how to make, and they wanted to start a business that was an exemplary workplace. So it was really a medium to get what they really wanted, which was an incredible workplace.
That's a really tremendous story and such a 2020 thing to say, find a business to make the workplace that we want. So when did InCord start? And maybe you give us a little bit of the background on the business.
Sure. So InCord started in 1995. So this is our 25th year. I'm waiting until we can celebrate in person. So I don't care if it's the 26th year. We're going to celebrate our 25th anniversary, whenever that is. The founders of the company both had worked in safety netting previously, and they had worked together. And in 1995, they started to start this company together. They really only sold netting, but they started to sell so much that the silent partner and company that manufactured all the netting said, "You're doing way too much for us. You just got to do this on your own now." And so these 2 salesmen then had to figure out how to set up their own manufacturing facilities and, get the netting in and be able to make custom netting themselves. So they went on that journey, and here we are.
That is pretty interesting. So let's just talk a little bit about the netting. I don't know that people generally knew that we made nets here in Connecticut, where there's so much great manufacturing going in Connecticut. And this is, I think, just one more example of how much people don't know. So, maybe just talk about what is the netting that InCord makes used for, and just, give us some background on that.
Yeah. So netting, it's a really niche business. But netting in Connecticut, it really probably started back with the whaling ships and all the sailboats. And so the Connecticut River had a pretty rich history of twine and netting manufacturing, especially for fishing. Netting is pretty much any sort of fiber that is made into a mesh, which is some sort of square or diamond shape that, the ends of that are either knots or a knotless intersection. So our netting, we actually don't sell anything for fishing anymore.
I was going to say, I didn't know that you guys did anything for fishing, but you don't.
Okay. Nowadays, our netting is mainly used for safety applications and barrier applications. So we use a lot of netting for construction sites, either for fall prevention or to prevent objects from falling on people underneath, an active construction zone. But the netting is also used in amusement parks and other sorts of recreational facilities, as barriers for walkways or climbing surfaces. We use, sports netting for the batting cages you'll see at schools, or the netting around the perimeter of, a baseball complex to, keep the balls from
getting into someone else, getting you in the face, perhaps.
Perhaps. We also make netting for like surfaces like an orchestra pit. So, you can't, if you're on a theater on a stage and you're practicing in rehearsal, you can't see the orchestra pit. And so people were falling in them. And so we started to make netting so that if somebody fell, they didn't fall onto the orchestra,
Oh, wow.
or down, fall 10, 15 feet, to the bottom of this black pit. So there's just a lot of unique applications because it's a textile. It can kind of, bend and form and, be made into all sorts of funky shapes. So it's a pretty fun medium to work with.
I bet. Lots of cool stuff, actually. And interesting things that even stuff I hadn't even thought about. Like we've never even talked about the orchestra pit netting, which just makes so much sense because I have actually known someone who fell into an orchestra pit. And because, as you mentioned, they're painted black, like they're meant to be not seen, which is problematic when you're trying to walk on something and it's dark and you can't see it. And then next thing you know, you're in it. Right. Hopefully you don't fall on somebody, but either way, that's super interesting. How is a netting company like InCord maintain its competitive advantage or its ability to be competitive in the marketplace, where some people might be thinking, well, isn't netting something cheap that they make in China or Taiwan or whatever?
Yeah. There's a huge advantage to having manufacturing in the U.S. for U.S. companies, especially when you're talking about safety applications. A lot of times people don't realize something's unsafe until the site's actually there. And then they need it immediately. So, we get a lot of requests for things that are needed next day or in 2 days. And you can't get netting next day from China. Even if you tried to get it on an airplane and get it here and get it through customs and get it to the job site, it's just not going to work. So having that, that lead time it's just a huge advantage in general for our environment because it is so fast paced. And about 98% of our products are custom.
Oh, wow.
So it's not, you're not getting in a container load of product that's all the same that you're just distributing out. We're working with designers, working with engineers and architects to create one-of-a-kind, safety applications or structures for a children's museum that'll never be made again. Again, it's so much easier when you can go to the site and you're communicating directly with individuals, and it's only, 2 days to change something as opposed to 6 to 8 weeks if something doesn't fit quite right on the as-built compared to the
what's actually out there in the field.
The designed, yeah.
So how does that work? So is that work same on a construction site? So if I'm building a building or whatever, I would have someone from InCord come out and do some measurements to figure out like how to get the right amount of netting and the right strength of netting, because how far something might fall may deal with like what exactly the netting construction needs to be. Like, am I on the right path there?
So there's a couple different elements in there. There's quite a few standards through OSHA of, what's required in a workplace to create a safe workplace for the workers and for passerbys. And a lot of that is guided by standards set up by various, industry-specific organizations that have really specific testing and known requirements. So if you're making perimeter safety netting, you have really specific testing that you have to do, and there's very specific installation requirements for it, training for the individuals on the work site, and also rules about how, far from where somebody's working, the netting needs to be below or, above them. And then we do testing. So for all of these applications, we do real-time testing to really figure out what the loads would be on the building, what the loads are on the netting, and how it reacts. Because it's a textile, it can kind of react in different ways than, if you just drop something onto a piece of metal, for example. But yeah, we'll send out representatives to a job site if it's already been built, to take measurements, to see truly how the netting needs to be attached to the structure safely. And we'll work with drawings from like the architects or engineers. It depends on the situation, which is going to be the best case. But a lot of times, the netting is such an afterthought that they needed it yesterday. And, we're working with them. And a lot of times with the COVID-19 situation, it's amazing having the video calls where you can just be guiding someone through, okay, take that measuring tape and go from here to here, check that for us. And then we're creating a drawing that they can sign off on without having to, necessarily physically go to the site, but everyone's really comfortable that they're getting, the safest product.
So fascinating. One of the great joys of kind of doing this podcast is like, you just get to learn so much stuff. And what I've found is that there's so many unique and interesting customizations about every single business and so many things we see every single day that we never think about, right? You go to a baseball game, you sit behind a net, but never think about what someone had to do to build it. You walk by a construction site, we see the netting and never think about how much detail had to go in to make sure that like the strength of the net was right, the size of the net was right, the distance of the net was right. It's just always fascinating to me how much interest there is. I got to ask, I can't imagine growing up, you were like, one day I want to be CEO of the world's best netting company. Or maybe you did, we can find out. What's your life's journey, Meredith, that got you into this business?
I mean, I have to say that I am completely humbled by what 2 hands and a brain can do. And, everything that you see, somebody put love and time and effort into doing. And the incredible thing about manufacturing is that you get to see the results of your actions, of what your hands do, of what your brain can do, of that teamwork that you can do with other people immediately. I mean, it's just the most instant gratification that there can be. You start with raw materials and 15, 20 minutes later, 2 hours later, you have something that you added value to with your own hands, with your mind, with not much else, and sometimes with a lot else. But that really brought me into manufacturing. I went to college for business. I thought I would, work in New York City wearing like slick
Not
suits.
Not just business, international business, Meredith.
International business. Wearing slick suits, going to Spain, going to France, studied those languages. And it was 2011 and I was my last day of college. They said, you picked a horrible major. The economy is horrible. Good luck out there. And so I was looking for jobs and I could really only find marketing internships, which just sounded terrible. It was not what I wanted to be in at all. I loved logistics. And my dad said, well, I know you don't want to come back to the country, but we have a job opening for a production project manager. How about you try it out for a couple months? You help us out. You get something on your resume so that, you have a little bit of a resume to, go into the city and do that. So that was almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I just absolutely loved how fast-paced it was. It was fantastic to get to do things and see the impact of them immediately. And I can't tell you enough. The instant gratification of helping people either in the organization or customers, seeing that product there, seeing it shipped, seeing it installed, seeing kids playing on a structure. It was a huge sense of pride. And, and you look at the world differently once you've been in manufacturing because you see that. And when you understand the people that are working in manufacturing, how much care they put into each one of the terminations on something or, the deburring that they do on a piece of metal, you kind of touch the arms of your chair a little differently. You're like, somebody really cared about this and they looked at it. And, and there's some inherent passion and I just love that.
It really sparked you. So you said you were out of the country when your dad called to offer you an opportunity to come back to InCord?
So I studied abroad in high school. I studied abroad in Spain.
Yeah.
And learned Catalan and Spanish. And in college, I studied abroad in France my junior year. And then I came back my senior year. I was living down in South Carolina. I went to College of Charleston. And I was like, it was kind of like the agreement, like you're not moving back home and you're on your own the day you graduate kind of a thing. And I'm like, this is going to be really hard. I don't know. if I can make it as a marketing intern. I don't think I'm going to succeed at that. So he threw me a bone.
Threw you a bone. Here's some. You said I love logistics.
Yeah.
There's just the planning of it, just really.
Yeah, I'm a planner by nature. And when I found out about critical path and that everything has a critical path and that all things lead to this one end result, but there's only, one way that you can organize things to get there that will be, 20 times faster. I just thought that was fantastic. And, in manufacturing, you get to do that all day long. You've got lead times from vendors. You've got, production times involved. You've got delays. You've got unforeseen circumstances. And to, plan those in, I really got to understand the inner workings of the entire company, how long it takes to process an order, what the interactions are like with the customer, what you need to communicate with them. It was never boring. And because it's all project-based, our entire company is project-based. It was like every day was a new day. So you'd build on these skills. And then the next day, it wasn't like you had to do the same project again. It was like a whole nother set of challenges and problems that you got to work through.
Yeah, that's great. Listen, I mean, if you can scale custom, which you guys have really done a great job at, that's like a really fun place to be because to your point, it's always a new challenge every day and you get to kind of reconstruct something in a different way every single day.
Yeah.
So the company was started in 1995. Your dad had you come back. Was your dad one of the two people that started the company?
He was.
Okay. So that's been in the beginning. And it's great too. I love the story that it started in 1995. And I just want to take a second to bring that up because so many stories that we have from manufacturing, years like the 40s and the 50s often come up. And we've been really fortunate to have a number of great Connecticut manufacturers, InCord now among them, fortunately, who show that you can start a manufacturing company in Connecticut in the 90s, even in the 2000s. We've had some that can be really, really successful, which is just tremendous. So I just wanted to take a point to point that out. So you came back in 2011, you're getting into logistics, and then what? Now here we are, not quite 10 years later, we're CEO. What does that journey look like?
So the position opened up for a production manager, and I was 2 years out of college. I had no management experience at all. But we had a significant amount of the production staff that spoke Spanish. So I felt like I had, something special I could offer of.
Probably not too many that spoke Catalan though.
No, none that spoke Catalan. But, I felt like I really had something to offer from like a communication standpoint of, okay, we can get everybody on the same page because I can translate and communicate things so that everybody's, working in sync. And, they posted the job, they got tons of resumes. And my father, he really stayed out of it. Like I'd ask him like, is mine in the running? Like, am I going to get a second interview? And he's like, it's up to the hiring managers. Like I have no part in this whatsoever. And I'm still amazed to this day that they ended up choosing me for the position because, I was not at all qualified. So there was 25 individuals at the production, team at the time. And I suddenly learned that the success was not in getting the job. The success was going to be in earning their respect. Mm-hmm. And so just because I had been awarded the position meant nothing. Now I had this big uphill battle in front of me. And it was pretty phenomenal what we did as a team. We grew the business. In the next 3 years, we ended up doubling the staff.
Wow.
We didn't have a hiring manager at the time. We didn't have HR. We were a really small business. So I learned all of those skills and it was incredible. And I think the benefits of being in a growth business is that people get opportunities that you don't necessarily see in a really stable, mature business. Because you're pushing people to do things that you couldn't have even dreamed you would need to get done in a business 5 months ago.
Right.
And people really step up to that. And what I really started to find a passion for was the incredibly unique talents and gifts that people had. They just needed to like let loose. And so getting to really know these 25 individuals and what their strengths were and how the dynamics of a team worked and what they could truly achieve and recognizing it just became like this, fire within. I just loved it. I loved coming to work every day. And from there, I picked
hold
up.
on, before you move off of that, I actually want to quickly, so you start off with something I think super interesting that I want to just pull on a little, which is you get the job. And really all that means is you now have the opportunity to do the job, but it doesn't, getting the job doesn't come with automatic respect and admiration, nor the knowledge, skills, or tools to even do the job, right? That's, you got to bring yourself. So two questions on that. I'll start with the first one, which is, could you share, how did you approach gaining their respect? And I would imagine, and maybe I'm wrong, but I imagine that as the owner's daughter, you kind of actually maybe have a little bit of a tougher hill to climb to kind of show that you deserve this role and that you're going to earn it and put in the work just like everybody else. So maybe speak to that. How did you go about gaining their respect?
Well, I figured that I couldn't tell them anything that I didn't do myself. So I would come in 30 minutes early to work every day. I'd leave 30 minutes late. I'd follow every single rule that the workplace already had in place. But I realized quite quickly I didn't know anything about these individuals. So I called them performance reviews. But what I would do is I'd start with interviewing them, not for their position, but just, what do you like doing? What do you have fun doing? What are your challenges? What tools are a pain to use? What's it like to come in every day? Where do you put your coat? Where do you put your lunch? Is there any problems going on? And I'm a fixer by nature. So I would take all my notes and I'd fix them and I'd counsel them on quite a bit of things where they just weren't sure how to go about it, either in the workplace or out of the workplace. And what I started to realize was there was just a lot of conflicts with individuals where it's just miscommunication. It just was more, you just need more communication. And so, I said what I did, what I said I was going to do. And I worked really hard, and any mistakes that the team made, I took them on as my own. I took full responsibility for them, and any successes that we had were theirs. It was 100% theirs. And that went a long way. But I just started loving everybody. And once you start really, once you know people and love them, and you have respect for them, then they might give it back to you.
Yeah, 100%. How did you just intuit that? I mean, you learned to do all that just like by thinking about it and doing it? Was this from, it's an amazing, tremendous insight and so effective. And you were was this 2011, 12?
I was 24 years old.
2 years out of school.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, I had incredible parents that were a huge part of their community, and they always brought individuals to our house, whether it was through study abroad or some program through the church helping newly immigrated individuals. And so I grew up understanding that intelligence isn't the same as education, mm-hmm. And I felt like when I started working there that the individuals in the production crew, maybe they had heard that their whole life, that they weren't smart because they hadn't, graduated high school or they hadn't gone to college or whatever. And I really wanted them to understand that I didn't see them that way. And I knew that they had an incredible intelligence. And if I could find the ways to highlight how the skills that they had for the math to create these shapes, the geometry that they knew how to do, engineers couldn't figure out how to do in CAD. And building on all of those and building on all those successes, I guess it was intuitive. I just love people. And, when you start off with loving people and loving the workplace before the work, which is really important to us, it comes all the rest of it comes easily.
Listen, just something that's always stuck in my mind. A friend of mine told me many years ago. It's just something I think about all the time. Givers gain, and I think givers gain through so many different ways. And look at what your parents kind of taking in these people and engendering that idea in you to help you to see that, because you're so right. I think too often we conflate education with intelligence. We assume that if someone doesn't speak English as well as we do, that's because they're not as smart. But the harder someone has to get their ideas out there, the harder it is for you to understand what their true intelligence is. But everybody has unique gifts. Everybody has something great to contribute. And oftentimes they just need someone to help them get them out. And for you to be able to intuit that and do that at the age of 24, man, I had a lot of respect for you before, Meredith. You're really go rising up the charts. That's a really super impressive. So then kind of going forward, so you get these kind of people, they're starting to believe in themselves through your belief in them. Where did you go from there?
So I took on our inventory because that was the logistics side of things. And I, maybe I'm a control freak. I just wanted to control every element of production. Oh. And so controlling the inventory that came in through production allowed me to control the, setting up the scheduling for the production flow. So once I started to manage the inventory, we went from, a 7 to 10 day lead time down to a 1 to 3 day lead time for custom products. We'd ship, the fastest we ever got to ship an order was 20 minutes. But most of the time it would ship out in, about 2 to 3 days. And I'd start to let everybody leave early if we shipped all the orders for the following day. But we got so good at it that we couldn't do that anymore because we were only working 6-hour days because they were getting too good. So we pulled in more orders and changed the ship dates around. So I had an insatiable, need to learn and understand the business. Started getting involved in the drafting because that came before the inventory and came before the production. So started getting involved in that workflow. And then from there, I was COO at the time. And from there, the position opened up for CEO. I was only 28 at the time. We were working through a joint venture, which was going to be this huge step for me. And I was pregnant with my second child. And so I waited 6 months. And then I don't know why, I just really felt like I can do this. I can do this. I feel like I want to do it. I want to be here. And so I asked the senior management team, if they would accept me as their CEO. And they're like, we thought that 6 months ago. You're good.
Catch up, Meredith. Yeah.
And, so I took it on. We had established a joint venture that same year. And I just kind of hit the ground running.
Is that JV still in operation?
It is. It sells commercial playground equipment. So it's these structures that go into playgrounds. They're freestanding. Mm-hmm. And it's a bunch of ropes. So kids climb all around them. And the basic concept is you want children to learn risk and healthy risk and how to manage that in an environment where they might get hurt, but they won't get killed.
Right.
So there's a lot of testing that, gets involved and a lot of studying children, playing but kids want that kind of, they want a little risk. If you've been to a playground that's 100% safe and no one would get hurt, no kid would want to play on it.
No.
So
yeah, there's always
we try to figure out that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I mean, anyone who's been a parent knows kids are always pushing those boundaries, trying to get that sense of what they can do, and risk is part of that. So that's an amazing journey where you had all these opportunities to really touch every side of the business. The only thing we haven't talked about yet is sales. Did you get into that part of the business as well?
So I am the unofficial sales manager at this point. However, my sister who co-owns the business with me, her name's Robin, she is our creative visionary. And she's worked at the company for about 20 years now. And she came up, while I came up through operations, she came from the bottom up of the sales side of the business. And she really manages the vision for the future and what that business development looks like and how we're going to approach the marketplaces and develop new business and new ideas for the future.
So let's talk about that for a second. So, I mean, what's her title?
Chief Visionary Officer.
Chief Visionary Officer. So she's more vision and sales and you're more implementation, leading the team. making sure that the business itself is operating correctly. Is that
Yes.
kind of the division of labor?
Yeah.
And I'd asked you before if you ever read EOS or you follow EOS. You don't, correct?
We don't. I have read both books.
Okay. But is that where you got the sort of visionary integrator split from, or it was just sort of happened?
Robin started, she set up that title, set up that name after reading a lot about Steve Jobs, actually. But then we read the book Rocket Fuel together, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like not only is that the title you're already calling yourself, but it exactly explains our relationship and our dynamic in the business of you see 5, 10, 20, 50 years out, what needs to happen. You've got 1,000,001 ideas every single day of what to do. And as an integrator, as the CEO of the business, I kind of pick from those ideas what we can do, what the team can do. But you need somebody pushing and driving all the time of what's possible or seemingly impossible to me that, has to get done and can get done. So.
Yeah, that like futuristic thinking to keep the company going in the other direction. So you said the company's grown a lot since you started. Can you like give me and the audience like a sense, staff count, whatever, revenue, however you want to do it. Where were you guys in 2011 and where are we now in 2020?
So 2011, I believe we were at maybe around 40 employees. Now we're at 115.
Solid.
Yeah.
That's solid. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of looping all the way back around. Something you said earlier that I made a note about, which was care about the workplace more than you care about the work. I think that's what you said. Did I get that right? Talk about that. I think that's a great kind of, little saying. If I can make a sign and put that over my desk. Talk about how you actuate that and what part of how that's incorporated into InCord as a business.
So the whole saying we have, it's one of our core values, is love the workers in the workplace before the work. And if you love the people doing the work, when they bring themselves into a workplace, you can't expect them to leave all their baggage at the door. You can't. As a human being, and especially now with COVID-19, you cannot expect that everybody coming in is going to forget their family, their problems, everything in that world outside, to focus on what you find important. If they don't find it important, it's not going to be important to them. So the quality really, for us, the quality of the product takes care of itself when you care about people, and in turn, they care about the product because they know it's beneficial to them. So we do a lot of work with individuals that come into our company of just trying to help them get through their problems. You're not going to get reprimanded if you're coming in late, but by gosh, we're going to figure out how to make you come in on time. Do you need help advocating for your kids' daycare or your school? Or, do you need help setting your alarm clock 20 minutes earlier? Whatever it is, we want to help people get through their problems because we're a community and we're all going to be better for it. And, at the end of the day, I don't want you to leave your problems at the door. I want you to feel like you have someone that is here to help you solve them because I love you and I care about you. And the other part of that is having all of our employees really understand the significance of what we do. We make netting that is for safety applications. People are walking at this 200 feet in the air. Quality of the product is extremely important. You can't care about that quality if you're worried about something going on in your personal life. You need help supporting that personal life in order to free your mind up to really understand the significance of what you're doing in the workplace. So, anytime we've had a workplace accident, it's because somebody was worried about, a sick child, a sick parent, finances, their car, something that was easy for us to fix. And we had the power and the ability to help them right then and there do something about it. And you can't help people that don't want to help themselves. But certainly I feel as a leader in the community, as a leader in the company, I might have knowledge, I might have connections that can help them get what they need that they may not even have been aware was available to them as a resource in the state of Connecticut.
How do you, you're so right. I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking, which is, a lot of your netting, especially on the safety applications, a lot of times they don't get used at all until they need to get used. And when they need to get used, they need to not fail. When you fall, like if no one ever falls, that net may have gone up there, may have been up there for who knows how long. It got taken down, and no one ever quote unquote needed it. But when you fall and you hit that net, it cannot fail, because if the net fails, somebody's going to get hurt and possibly die. So it's such a tremendous responsibility. How do you, kind of going back to the workplace culture that we were just talking about, so many people, myself included, aspire to do all this, and it's easy to get led astray, and the tyranny of the urgent takes over, what you want to do. So I want to kind of dig onto two important things on this. Number one, how do you stay focused to keep that front of mind? And then I'm going to talk about the other side of the coin. So maybe answer that first. How do you keep that on focus?
Robin really helps as far as driving the culture, that's the vision that we're holding on to. And from the sales to the shipping department, that is the goal. That's what defines success for us, is that we've made a product that we can go to bed at night safely, soundly, knowing that if someone were to fall into it, nothing would have impeded that from failing.
Right.
So, we've created our own test frames on our facility to ensure that all of our netting, the different lots, the different styles, all meet the standards and continue to meet the standards, where we can really understand what those dynamic or static loads are for the netting and what it can handle. And we share what our customers say all the time. We have pictures in our entire, all over our workplace of our netting and applications. We share all the projects with all of the employees before and after. This is where the net's going. Visualize it, understand it. Listen to this voicemail of somebody thanking us for saving a life because somebody didn't fall into their 20-foot orchestra pit net. And people hold on to that. And once they can really apply and visualize how what they're doing impacts that greater picture, they hold on to that themselves. And, and then it takes a whole new life, because they make meaning of it.
Right. Yeah, that now it really connects. So when they're stitching up that next net, or they're getting ready to ship it out, or they're taking the order or working on the design, it connects to what it really meant to somebody.
Right. So, always trying to share what that application is, and, show new employees pictures of it and how it works, then they see how they fit into that bigger picture and how they're a part of something much greater than themselves. And,
people appreciate that.
Yeah, they love it.
And how do you continue to make that a priority? When COVID hits and there's, business risk, or there's pressure on sales or delivery, or, competition, how do you still keep the company focused on, the workplace over the work?
So we were deemed an essential business as manufacturing, but also because of the customers we have, they're essential businesses. They were not permitted to stop running by the government, by the state. We work in a lot of places that involve distribution facilities, getting food to people. And so sharing that with the individuals coming to work, that it's critical for our customers, it's critical for our business, that you come into work and safely to get this product out, because you're serving your fellow countrymen, you're serving America, you're keeping construction workers that have to be on site safe. That was a big part. And then, the other big part was I committed that, amid everything happening, nobody would be let go because of COVID-19. I wanted, at the beginning of it, I'm like, you see all these other companies having to furlough employees or let them go. We're going to do whatever it takes to not have that happen in our company. Get that worry out of your head. Let's focus on making product as fast as possible for the people that really critically need it right now to serve these operations that are absolutely critical during a pandemic.
Yeah, keeping that thing front of mind. So let me ask you that on the flip side of the coin, which is, not everybody can make it, right?
Right.
That you said, I didn't write it down, but you said, I can only care about you if you care about yourself, or something along those lines. So how do you thread that needle, right? How do you maintain that compassionate culture, but also have accountability?
So it is a workplace and it's dynamic. And, I really feel like as a at-will state, we both have this right to move on. We define success as an individual that's come into our company, however they leave, whenever they leave, is better for having worked at our company. It might not have been a great fit because the skills didn't match up or they didn't quite fit with the company culture. But were they better for leaving? Did they understand how great a workplace could be, how you should get along with your coworkers, or, that accountability does matter, and that if you're not being accountable to what you've said you're going to do, and that doesn't align with our company values, that it's not going to work for you at our workplace. And so, when we do have to part ways with employees, having the rest of the team understand, not the specifics, but that this is the criteria for which somebody stays and for which someone goes.
This is how we could make it.
And it's not necessarily related to mistakes, but if you didn't learn from that mistake or you didn't become better because of it, now we're all not better off, because you have to learn from it and you have to be accountable to what you're doing. And if you can't accept responsibility when you've made a mistake, you can't work with the team to understand how to do it better. It just doesn't fit with our culture. And so that's kind of how we tried to shore it up.
Yeah, we call that paying tuition, right? We don't mind paying tuition, but we better learn something from it. Right.
That's great.
Yeah. So, and I'm just gonna ask one more question on this. I don't know if you have any specific thoughts people could learn from, or any kind of tools you have that allow you to execute the accountability aspect without seeming to be cold-hearted, I don't know if you have any tips on that front, or.
We use pretty standard performance reviews, and we try to really have good communication. You should be very aware of what your responsibilities are, and what the dates you have. But from a management perspective, if you don't follow up on those dates and saying, you didn't make it by that date, you didn't communicate with me, you're not holding yourself accountable, you've let the team down, then it's not going to work. And so I always tell our management team, this is now your failure.
Yeah. True.
It's one thing for that individual not to meet their expectations, but for you to not hold them up now is a reflection on you. How are you going to change the situation and help this employee get the picture?
How do you so there's this really interesting dynamic that I've noticed in business, which is especially people in sort of some, I'll call it middle management roles, have two levels of accountability they have to hold people to. One is the people that they're leading. They got to hold them accountable. And that's one thing. It's talked about a lot. The other thing that isn't always talked about as much is how do they hold the people that they report to accountable for listening to the feedback that they're giving. Hey, we need to make this change, or we're not getting enough communication, down to the people on the floor, whatever. I've just hit my mind. I don't know if you've any thoughts about that, but that dual accountability role.
So we do a lot of surveys, sometimes anonymous, sometimes not, depends on the topic. But we do surveys for our entire workplace or for a certain department. We just use SurveyMonkey.
Sure.
To go through all the results. But that seems to really help the communication loop.
Yeah.
Of, okay, this was an issue we were working on. Let's ask how we're doing. And if we do it anonymously, you get some really honest feedback if you've met your goals or not. And that, in our opinion, comes back to the senior managers who are really the biggest servants of the company. If you're not supporting your middle managers and who they're supporting, then that's a reflection on your accountability and what you need to continue to work on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So you mentioned earlier that you and your sister co-own the business currently. So talk about that. How long have you guys owned it, and how did that transition?
So we became co-owners on March 9th.
2020.
2020, I think 3 days before the pandemic became official. Our father had passed away on March 8th. And the three of us had worked in the business. We had very small ownership shares in advance of all of this. And we had great advice to set up monthly meetings as owners to really work on what the succession plan was going to be for the business to ensure business continuity if something happened expectedly or unexpectedly, what that was going to look like. And that translated for me as CEO to communicating that with our senior management staff. Like I said, I'm a planner, and I knew if something was going to happen unexpectedly to my father, that all I'd want to do is grieve. I wouldn't want to have to be coming into work for a couple weeks. I'd want to be with family. So I made sure that was well communicated with our team, and that as owners, we talked about it and we're really comfortable with what the division of duties is going to be, what it's going to look like on paper, how that's going to ensure that the business continues without skipping a beat. So my father passed away unexpectedly, but the business did not skip a beat. And our senior management team, while my sister and I were grieving, held down the fort, literally, for those first 2 weeks as we were figuring out what we were going to do to keep our employees safe. And, if our business was going to get shut down, if it wasn't, what we were going to do, what we were going to do about all these customers that had really, critical infrastructure, essential operations that we were still obligated to support. So it went pretty smoothly.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
But it took a lot of talking in advance to really all be on the same page of understanding what it was going to go. And so it got put to the ultimate test to go through a succession during a pandemic. Definitely is some stories we're going to tell our grandchildren, I'm sure. But because the senior management team was so aware of what it was going to look like when it did happen, they really understood exactly what to do, what their role was in it and what our new roles were going to look like and be, and how they could support us as we, we're now going to be supporting them in different ways.
I mean, you could write a case study, I feel like, on this, because it's, it's just a confluence of events that, listen, first of all, it's a once in a century pandemic, right? So just that, and then this all happening, not even after you guys had a chance to sort of set the course, but right as it's starting. So you're being pulled out to kind of deal with personal stuff, which I think we all could, relate in one way or another how important that is. But now there's so much uncertainty. So there obviously was so much planning that went into that. And I just want to talk about it a little bit because there's so many businesses in Connecticut, family businesses and otherwise, that don't spend the time up front to do succession planning and to think about what the future looks like, because we'll do it later, whatever. And unfortunately, sometimes things happen. So, how did you guys do it? Was it something you did internally? Did you use professionals? Who drove the idea to do it? Like, just maybe share some of that with the...
So we got connected with the Center for Family Business at New Haven University. And Paul Sessions, fantastic guy who really had a passion for family businesses and helping support what the structure of those discussions should be like and look like. And one of the first things he said to us is, what is success going to look like for your family and this business 20 years from now? And so we all agreed that we wanted people employed. Our goal wasn't to sell the business and make money. It was to keep members of our community employed with gainful, really valuable skills. And so we kind of worked backwards from that of like, okay, well, how as we transition ownership, are we going to make sure people still maintain that employment? We said, well, you're always going to need senior managers. You're always going to need a CEO of the company that leads it and understands that. And so then the discussion really, got into, okay, is it going to be ownership with a non-family management team, or and we kind of all agreed, no, like we love the business, we love working in it, like we want to be part of that management team. So we had set up a board of advisors which started as we were succession planning. So it was separate, but they helped keep us accountable as employees of the company, while as owners and as family members, we worked on the ownership of the company and started to kind of create that definition between what's a working in the business decision and accountability measure versus what is working on the business for these goals. And, we just went through a whole slew of questions. What's the best case? What's the worst case? What do you dream in? What do you want out of the company? Does that align with what the owners originally wanted for the company? Is it okay to, deviate from that? What kind of deviations are okay? What are we keeping the same? And we all agreed it was the culture. If we had to pivot products, if we had to pivot styles, that's fine. But the culture was the most important thing to the owners, the founders of the company. And that was going to be the most important thing for us to hold, as we, transition in the succession plan.
It's just so important. And, you're among a number of people on the podcast who have brought up that like Family Business Center at the University of New Haven. And that was Paul, right?
Yes.
You brought up Paul. It's just so important. I think, I hope people who are out there who don't have a succession plan take this opportunity to pick up the phone and call someone. Maybe we can link it in the notes. Because I just think you just got to get started, You
have to have those conversations. And I think people put it off for a variety of reasons. And it was tough at first to get into the habit of having routine, regular conversations where sometimes you're not bringing up things at all. And other times, you're spending 6 hours on really heavy stuff. But having somebody to help you set what the intention is of the meetings, what the outcomes of the meetings are, it was extremely helpful because we had no idea how to get started, but I'm glad we did when we did. It was definitely beneficial.
No doubt. And I think, it's funny, maybe not the right way to say that, but interesting or parallel in that, you guys make safety netting that you hope you never use, but when you need it, you hope it works. And the same thing with these sort of succession plans, right? You hope you never need to pull the ripcord on an emergency succession plan, but by golly, if you need it, you really hope it's there and it works. And obviously that did for you guys, which is just tremendous. So big kudos to you and the leadership team for making that happen. We're starting to run out a little bit of time, but one thing we haven't gotten to yet that I really wanted to talk about, two kind of things actually. One is, and you did touch on it a little bit earlier, but I think it's so important, is investing in your business and making sure that we're putting dollars into research and development, developing people, developing products. I know that's something that you guys believe in, you personally and at InCord. And maybe you could just talk a little bit about your thoughts, and what you guys are doing to invest in the future to make sure the business is as successful or more successful in 2021, 2025, 2030 than it is this year.
So I think you think about two things when you think about investing in the business, or maybe three. You think about the people, you think about the workplace, and you think about the tools the people have, at least for us. So when we think about the tools for the workplace, we are very, very involved in the vendor community and the tooling community to see what new products are out there. We might not have a use for it yet, but if we know what it is, when that special situation comes up, we know just the tool to get. And often we've just thought things are really cool and we've brought them in and figured them out, and then we figure out a way to use them. But we always are trying to look for tools to make jobs easier for people. And so we always ask people what they want. And there might not be a tool out there for them yet, but as soon as we find one, we'll get it in. Our work it requires hands. Quite a bit of it is using your hands on a sewing machine or twisting rope to splice it. So any tools that we can find to assist people to make their day a little bit easier, that's going to come from them. They're the ones working with the materials. And the same thing on the technology side. We ask the sales team, what tools do you need? Like, forget what we think you might need. What tools do you need to make your job easy? And sometimes it's really simple. They're like, I want a binder with everything in it. And you're like, oh,
I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And other times it's, we want a different CRM, or, we want a CRM that does this, this, and this. And then we go out searching. on a building perspective, dreaming in that future, it's where my sister really, shines in what does the next 30 years look like? What should the workplace look like? What's going to be the safest workplace, the most efficient, the brightest? And what does that space need to look like for what we're going to be capable of doing in 30 years from now? And then on the people side, we have a tuition reimbursement program, which we really push people to use to focus on whatever skills they want in the world. I'm a big believer in everything's related. There's no such thing as coincidences. So we allow people to use it for whatever they'd like: massage, cooking, yoga. We do have people go for drafting or, back for more accounting classes and things of that nature.
They can go use the money to get a massage or learn how to do massage.
Learn how to do a massage.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. It has to be a class that they are attending and receive at least a pass-fail grade for.
Got it.
So that really helps spark people's interest, and we want people to continually be hungry for information and not feel like everything in the world. Be a student of the world, and that translates into the company. And you never know what tidbit or what connection people are going to make that's going to inspire the next idea, in the company. And then on a bigger scale, I'm involved in EAMA, like you are, because I really believe we're creating a workplace for future generations, and I want those future generations to understand how important manufacturing is in the U.S., how great a career it can be for them, and that we don't want to lose those skills in our communities. That value that they can bring, even if the company goes away, you'll never lose those skills. Those are translatable skills where you can add value to anything. You could start working in your garage, and with the skills you've learned, start your own business. We want to teach that to people. We want them to believe in themselves.
Yeah. 100%. It's a tremendous thing. And listen, I love that. I think I was given an opportunity to start, IT Direct, and was hugely supported by the person who I worked for before I started this at a similar age to when you started. And he could have been disappointed, but he was unbelievably supportive and was my first customer and sort of did all that. And I remember that. And we've had an opportunity over the years. I've helped a couple people who worked here, start other businesses. We've had someone recently who's going to start their own business also. And again, not in related fields necessarily, but I think it's just so important to help people achieve their dreams and support them the way you talked about. That's pretty awesome. On the product side, do you guys do a lot of R&D internally yourselves to see different applications for netting and rope that might be out there?
We do. We do a lot more R&D in what the products we already have are capable of. Mm-hmm. So
new applications for existing
That's products.
Tremendous, yeah.
We've probably had the same products for the past 25 years, but the applications we use them for have evolved. And there are new products, and there's evolutions in the strength of the products. But we have testing machines, tensile pullers to test the strength of the rope, and like I had said before, a huge frame. It's about 25 by 25 feet that you can drop things into netting to see how it reacts, which is just really fun to see. I think it was the best day ever for our engineering team to be able to play with that. They were working, but let's be honest, it was a little bit of fun involved.
That's right. See what I can drop in this net and what it's going to be. Yeah. Meredith, it has been so awesome having you on. Before we go to rapid fire round of questions, I did want to just bring up, something I mentioned earlier on. We're really excited to have had so many tremendous women in manufacturing. And a question that I've been asking a lot for kind of people's just input on is just because I think diversity and inclusion is so important, and it's been rightly an interesting topic. I don't know if you have any just thoughts about how you view manufacturing as an environment for people of different backgrounds, of different genders, races, ethnicities, et cetera. What your general thoughts are on that, and what InCord does, if anything, to promote diversity and inclusion.
I think all human beings are created equal. and everybody has a special and unique intelligence and talent, and how the environment in which you were brought up in and the adversities that you've seen have shaped you and are going to be your greatest strengths. And so I think the more diverse a workplace you can find of people from a variety of diverse backgrounds, whether it's, where they were born or who their parents were or what languages they spoke, they're always going to add something unique that might challenge the company, but it's going to create a more understanding and really relevant workplace for problem solving. People who come from different backgrounds, whatever you want to say is that difference, they think about problems differently and they approach them differently based on what they've had to go through in the past. So, we really try to create a platform for people to be heard, because I think that's the biggest part of diversity and inclusion, is that to be included, you need to have a platform where you can be heard. And once you have that and people feel that they have an equal place on the stage to be heard with the majority population, whatever that might be, male, female, black, white, then they can get those ideas out there, and it doesn't matter where it's coming from. It's that they're being heard.
Yeah, listen, I completely agree. There's that saying that if you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And I think having that, like, a different backgrounds and different experiences allows different people to come at a problem from a different perspective. And those different perspectives, if we can take the time, not just to have them, which is the diversity part, but the inclusion, find a way to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak their truth and their view on something. I think really, just you said it so perfectly, it just gives you different views and allows us to solve problems differently and hopefully in better ways. And at the core, business is a lot of ways about solving problems and meeting people's needs, right?
Absolutely.
Well, let's hit those rapid fire round of questions. Meredith,
Okay.
You ready?
I think so.
All right, here we go. Red Sox or Yankees?
Red Sox.
Nice. Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Starbucks.
When you take time off, this is outside of COVID, so no pandemics, you a staycation or exotic destination kind of gal?
Camping in Connecticut.
Oh, that's staycationing. I'm going staycation. iPhone or Android?
Android.
Sports car or SUV?
SUV.
If you could do anything other than be the CEO of InCord, you had to do something else, and it could be anything in the whole wide world, what would you be? What would you do?
I would be a stay-at-home mom.
Okay. There you go. Definitely get to scratch that planning itch. That's for sure, doing that.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite business book, if you have one?
Oh, gosh. Anam Cara.
Anam Cara. It's a new one. I don't know that one. I'm going to have to get that. What's something that you learned early in your career, or early in your life, Meredith, that you think has propelled you to all the great success that you've had?
Luck favors the prepared mind.
Luck favors the prepared mind. Got some great quotes out of this show today, Meredith. What's something that you learned later in your career or later in your life that if you went back and told young Meredith and she would listen to you, that you think would have a really positive impact on the outcome and trajectory of her life?
Don't be timid. Life is way too short to be afraid of what people might think of you. Just go ahead and do it, and don't be timid.
Let the chips fall where they may. Put your best foot forward and see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely love it. Meredith, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming.
Wonderful to talk to you too. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Ari.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by IT Direct.
As always, thank you so much for tuning in and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a community where we can learn and grow together. Your input, feedback, and engagement is critical to making that happen. Please do comment, like, and subscribe so more and more people can hear what we're doing and join our community of growth and success. Thanks so much for tuning in. Talk to you again soon.